Welcome to our digital stage. My name is Ashleigh Gordon, and I, along with Anthony Green, are co-founders of Castle of Our Skins. Thank you so much for joining us in our new Founders Chat series, where we will be talking with some true movers and shakers in the arts, the visionaries, leaders, the Energizer bunnies, the get shit done people, who not only are Black and proud, but ironically, maybe not ironically, happen to be majority women. So today we kick off our series with one of my favorite groups, the String Queens. Yay. A little bit about the String Queens in case you don't already know them. They are praised for their authentic, soulful, and orchestral sound. The String Queens is a dynamic trio that creates stimulating musical experiences that inspire diverse audiences to love, hope, feel, and imagine. With an array of repertoire spanning from the Baroque era to the jazz age to today's Billboard Hot 100 chart, TSQ, as they're known, performs versatile programs that transport audiences through time and a multitude of musical genres. Based in DC, TSQ members have been featured in famed performance venues from across 4 continents, including Carnegie Hall, Kennedy Center, Howard Theater, which has a long history of supporting Black artists, Royal Festival Hall, Radio City Music Hall, the Shanghai Grand Theater, Moscow Conservatory, Blues Alley, just to name a few. TSQ members have collaborated with artists throughout the music industry, including Ledisi, Solange, who's my favorite, Leslie Odom Jr., Janelle Monáe, Jennifer Hudson, Ariana Grande, on and on and on, including the late, great Aretha Franklin. As chamber and orchestral musicians, TSQ members have performed under the batons of legendary musical directors Ray Chu, Adam Blackstone, and many more. Recognized as they should be by DC's leading news network, WUSA9, as school teachers by day and concert performers by night, TSQ launched a series of concerts and education programs with Washington Performing Arts as the 2019-2020 Ensemble in Residence for their signature community engagement entitled Mars Arts DC. Late last year, TSQ premiered their debut album at legendary jazz venue Blues Alley. That album is available now for purchase, and we hope you will go ahead and purchase it. So, first question for the Queens, can you introduce yourself and sort of share where you're from, where you currently live, your sort of musical journey, and anything else that you would love to share with our listeners?
Let's start with Dawn.
Okay, I didn't know who wanted to go.
All right, great.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm Dawn Johnson. I am the violist in the String Queens. I am originally from Miami, Florida. And then I'm in DC now via New York City. I started my musical studies in elementary school in an inner city music program. My school had a very robust arts program. So in elementary school, I was able to participate in theater, in dance, and music. And so I started out on violin, actually. And then when I was maybe about in middle school, I switched over to playing the viola. I went to New World School of the Arts. Yes, Viola Love with Ash. One of my favorite violists, by the way. So I went to New World School of the Arts for high school. And then after New World School of the Arts, I ended up at the Juilliard School for my undergraduate studies and for my graduate studies. And then when I finished at Juilliard, I moved here to Washington, D.C., which is where I call home now. I live here with my family, my husband, my daughter. And when I am not performing with the String Queens, I am spending lots of time with my family.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay,
let's
so
move to Elise. Yeah.
So I'm Elise Sharp. I am originally from Washington, D.C. Raised very proud uptown. Anyway, so I grew up in the D.C. Youth Orchestra program, which is actually one of the places I teach now. I just got off of a Zoom with my kids. So D.C. is home, home, home for me. Went to Howard University, totally in the music scene there, and just love everything I do in education and performance.
Awesome. And then I'm Kendall Isidore, originally from Houston, Texas. I actually didn't start my musical journey until my family moved to Pensacola, Florida. which is where I started taking piano lessons first when I was 8. And I actually wanted to play the clarinet, but my mom said I had just started piano and I needed to focus on one thing at a time. And she was right about that, until the spring of 3rd grade, where they brought us, our school also had a very robust music program. They had shown us the band and the choir in the fall, and they waited till the spring for whatever reason to introduce us to the orchestra. And I had never known any person in my family or in my neighborhood or anything like that who had ever played a stringed instrument. And I was immediately attracted to the violin. It sounded like a human voice to me. I never envisioned playing the way that I play now, but I just loved the sound of it. And for whatever reason, when I asked my mom if I could play the violin, there was a resounding yes, and overwhelming support from she and my dad. And then there was the summer before 4th grade when I was going to start, where the school called my mom and said, hey, we ran out of violins. Unfortunately, right, because I had chosen violin as my first choice, unfortunately, she's going to have to play viola. And although the viola is an amazing instrument and I love the viola and I wish I was proficient on viola now, I didn't care. I just wanted to play a stringed instrument. And so I'm in the background, my mom's on the phone like, nope, you need to find her another violin. She signed up for violin. And I'm like, Mommy, viola is cool, like that's fine too. And she's like, no, you signed up for violin. And so I'm so grateful to my mom for that funny story, but really for her just being my first and my number one advocate for my entire life. And that is how I ended up playing the violin.
Awesome. Fantastic. So I would love to hear, it sounds like you all are educators, right, in the DC area, which I'm assuming that's how you first maybe connected. I don't know if Elise and Kendall, you also knew each other from Howard?
It's a funny story. Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
No, we actually didn't know each other from Howard. We knew each other from Dawn. Dawn is the person that introduced us to each other. I met Dawn years ago with Soulful Symphony, and Dawn and Kendall met because Kendall needed a violist for a gig she was doing, and Kendall worked with Dawn's husband. And Dawn's husband goes, I have a violist. She's married to me and she's at home. And do you want a violist? I have one. And that's a crazy way of saying the story. But here's this man saying my wife is a violist. And Kendall's first reaction was like, that's so cute, but like a real violist. And he's like, yeah, she went to Juilliard. And it's like, okay, all right, let's talk. And so she called up Dawn and they met at that gig. I think they drove to the gig, right, together? And we met, and it's just been a beautiful friendship. And then Dawn, after she had Briley's first birthday. I think the day after Briley's birthday party, Dawn, Kendall, and I had a gig together. And that was actually Briley's birthday party is when Dawn brought both of us, Kendall and I, together to meet. So we could, you could get to feel each other's vibe before you go out into a gig for the first time together, which was so smart, Dawn. That was really good. She's so organized. So, Kendall and I met at the party, and it was like, hey, okay, cool. See you tomorrow. And we get to the gig, and here we are, feeling each other's way. We knew the music, but you feel each other's style, and it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Because we've all done classical gigs before. And this was one of them. But there's a different kind of energy when our energy gets together, even if we're strangers to this new ensemble that we haven't quite developed. We just played a gig together, but there was a different kind of energy and a different style of playing that actually ended up happening during the gig. And it's magic ever since.
So is that the sort of origin that you would call with the Strings Queen and how you connected, how you formed? What was the going from meeting together at a gig and Dawn being the connector of all good things, as violists are, right? What led from that single gig to, okay, let's keep doing this, to having a shirt and a mug with the String Queens and, years later? Can you talk a little bit more about that origin story and how that started? Hopefully we'll get Kendall back for this too as well.
I think she's having some Wi-Fi trouble. So as far as the string queens and our origin, after we met at Riley's, well, not we, but after Kendall and Elise met at Riley's birthday party, you know, we went to a gig together. We loved, like Elise was saying, we loved our sound together. We loved the way we felt when we played together. You know, sometimes you end up playing in chamber music groups or small ensembles, and there's this sort of vibe that things aren't really gelling, but you have to get through the gig. And so this was not one of those instances. It was just so much synergy, so much love, so much positivity, so much happiness, and all of the things that you want to feel when you play music, we felt immediately. And so we just started, you know, rehearsing a little bit more, bringing different repertoire to the table. I'm classically trained, Elise is classically trained. We all have this sort of different background in our training, and it's not just classical music. And so we started to bring other styles of music to the table when we would rehearse. We brought some R&B, we brought some pop, we brought some gospel music to the table. And so it was sort of this really broad palette of music that helped sustain us from that point to where we are now. We didn't sort of just lock ourselves into one lane. And we also had a responsibility as educators to introduce our students to many different types of music as well. And so with everything that we do, right, we seek to inspire the next generation of young performers. And when we find ourselves getting bored with something, we know young people will get bored with that same thing. And so we're constantly looking for fresh new ways to reinvent ourselves and incorporate different styles of music. Right now, we're actually working on some original compositions to start including in our repertoire. And when we had our first sort of big performances together, the feedback was so incredible. The response from the audience was so incredible. People were laughing, people were crying, people were shouting in the middle of the concert, you know, the big no-no in a concert hall, right? Don't you dare cough, don't you dare clap, don't you dare show any emotion until the end of the fourth movement. And so we didn't have that vibe when we were playing. And we saw so many young people in our audience, families in our audience. It wasn't sort of that old, and I hate to say this, sort of like dying out classical crowd that you get a lot of, that you get a lot of when you're in a concert hall. And there were so many people who had shown up to our performance. And so we played everything from classical to jazz to pop to gospel. We were smiling, we were laughing, we were talking, we were interacting with the audience. And so these are things that we weren't necessarily accustomed to doing with other performance ensembles. And so we said, hey, let's build on this. You know, let's really turn this into something that can last for a long time and inspire future generations to come. And so we've had wonderful, we've been received wonderfully from audiences all over the country. It can be a wedding gig, it can be a gig at the Kennedy Center, it can be a gig at Blues Alley. The feedback and the response and the love in the room, the joy in the room when we perform is always there. And that's what motivates us to keep going.
Yeah, and I think when we started doing gigs together, that was so good, Dawn, by the way. I love it when you speak.
But out of here. But I get it from you.
Oh, girl. So
the teacher in us.
When we started doing gigs together, we actually had a meeting. This is, I must say first, this is the most organized group I've ever been, the most organized ladies I've ever been with. We actually had a meeting to talk about, so where should we go from here? Had our instruments, did a little playing, and then really just sat and talked and came and said, hey, I think we should do this. Do we want to do this? And all of us said yes. We talked about what it involved and came up with a name and really decided to commit to being a group. Talked about communication is key, you know, all the relationship things that you should say in the front end, whether you're with a partner of love or a partner in business and love, you know, we just had that real honest conversation. And that's how we started. We moved forward together and did this. And it's just, wow. I'm still like, I wake up some days like, wow, you know,
like we did it.
Have these two ladies with me all the time. Yeah.
Well, and it's the honesty and the transparency, right? Like we'll sit in rehearsal and, you know, read some charts or work on some of our arrangements. And if someone's out of tune, if a double stop, a chord is not laying well, whatever it is, and that's on the job too. We're not afraid. It's not about not being afraid to hurt people's feelings. We know that it's in love because we had the conversation Elise just referenced, where we said, hey, if we're going to do this thing, it has to be in excellence. And the only way it can be in excellence is if we are transparent and honest with each other, from the music to even our attire to what we want to present, because we want people to walk into these concert halls or to a wedding. If we play a wedding, anyone who experiences us, and we want them to be different than they were when they walked in. We want them to leave. You said we want to create music that inspires people to love, hope, feel, and imagine. And we want that to be exponentially the case for everyone who hears our music.
And there's also something really special when the aesthetic of the String Queens, right? Like, you very seldomly see 3 African American women playing stringed instruments. And that message is something that's very important to us, again, to inspire the next generation of young performers to see themselves in us. And so we know that we have a responsibility, right? In addition to all of the creative things that we do together, there's also a responsibility piece that's associated with the String Queens to make sure that we're cultivating the next generation of not just young Black female performers, but young Black males and people of color and people outside of just the normal sort of white European aesthetic that you see a lot of when you see people playing the instruments that we play.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything from the queens, you are queens, right? You are royalty. You are excellent. You are gorgeous. Every single image and every single shot, you are well matched and beautiful. The whole physicality, the whole artistry, the whole language, everything is just so well crafted, of excellence, which reads loud and clear with everything that you're doing, and is amazing. Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely. Everything is just so well thought out. You have left no stone unturned in all that you do. And that is just so heartwarming, especially for us, for Ash and I to see as we develop Castle of Our Skins. And I loved hearing your origin story and how this all organically came about. And I love hearing the synergy and the friendship that you all have. It's just so inspiring. And I would love for you to talk about the programming that you do in your seasons. What are some of the most memorable concerts that you've organized? How do you put together your repertoire? And are there any memorable kind of funny moments that you've had with the audience during your concertizing?
Wow, I love these questions.
Great questions, right?
Yeah. Wow. I hate to say this again. It's a godsend that we're together. And I will say, we are not each other's first groups.
Right.
So we have had the experience with other groups to, with your first, you're kind of figuring things out. And as you move along, you kind of get the hang of things. And you have a little bit more education to do better the next time. And when we come together, I'm going to speak first on our concert. Somebody else can bring something else. But in our repertoire, we happen to love all types of music, and we have the freedom to present what we like, and then everyone else gets on board, and we put in our nuances or and we have conversations about how we're feeling a piece should go. It still is the collaboration of the 3, the respect and the communication of the 3 that can make whatever one person brings now everyone's piece. And so when we're like, my favorite was Spain. And I said, we have to play Spain, whatever we do in our lives. So I found the music, got Spain, everyone started working on it. And so when we start with the music, it's like form. What's the form? How are we going to do this? And it's a collective. Kendall may have an idea. Oh, that's great. Dawn will have an idea. You know what? I think it'll work if I do this. And then I'll have an idea. Or maybe not, because I brought the piece in. So I'm like, you want to take it from here? No. but it's really the 3 of us working together. And then it's also when we're thinking about our concert, what do we enjoy playing? And we also understand with that, that's number 1. But it doesn't necessarily mean it still makes it, because we do have to figure out, what's the program? What are we playing for? Who are we playing for? But we also know that when you love it, when you show you love it, it fits anywhere. And so Spain is really one of those that fits almost anywhere. If there's, I don't know a reason why we wouldn't play it. Except maybe I'm like, I don't know about a solo today, y'all. But But other than that, I mean, that's one of those pieces, you know what, stick it in there. Another one, Dawn. Oh, Dawn, we had to do Hotel California.
Oh,
Like Dawn was like, we have to do. I've got the music. We have to do it. And when someone comes to you with that much passion, you're not going to say no, number one. Number one, you're not going to say no. Number two, we're going to figure out a way to play this where we respect the composer, but we also add ourselves into it. So we did that with Hotel California, and you have to hear it because you can tell this is Dawn's song. Our song, we put, it's not that we put more, but you can just feel the making love to the music.
Such a lovely arrangement, right?
Right, thank you.
Well, and it comes from backgrounds, everyone's musical background.
Right.
I mean, for Dawn for Elise, I mean, and I feel like many of the pieces Elise wrote herself or arranged herself, it has that Latin flavor in it. It has that cadence or that feel, that sound. And then when you put the three of us together on it, we just fall into whatever Elise's foundation was. I feel the same way about Hotel California. I feel the same way, you know, I grew up with we all did, Motown and Stevie. And so when we hit Isn't She Lovely, when we hit September and things like that, what people's personal stories were when those pieces were introduced to us is really what the audience is hearing.
And when we play, again, one of Kendall's favorites that we do is Eleanor Rigby. And I don't know how transformed Eleanor Rigby into a spiritual. It literally is a spiritual now, the way that we have arranged it. But when you think about it, and I used to shy away from Eleanor Rigby, but Kendall, because there's so many solos and improv sections in it, but Kendall and Elise really encouraged me. Elise started the conversation with, I'm very organized, and that can sort of put me in a box sometimes. And so Kendall and Elise really draw that expressive, free quality out of me. And when it's time to solo, like they literally, am I allowed to curse on this or no?
Asked it.
Like when it comes, I'm like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. But then Kendall just gives me this reassuring look like, go sis, you got it. Let your hair down, be free. And that's how a lot of our arrangements come about. Just let your hair down and be free, right? We practice, right? When we start our individual practice, right? We're going through the scales, we're going through the etudes, we're laying down the foundation, and we have to trust that process when we get on stage to perform, right? Like you trust in the practice. But when there's a solo section coming up, right, there's nothing sort of predetermined when that happens. So everything that you laid the foundation with is kind of out of the window, although muscle memory, you know, kicks in, and you just really are free. And you feel oftentimes when we're playing, I always say this, you almost feel like the spirit of our ancestors is right there with us the entire time, right? Like, and we don't do this for us. We know that why we do this is much bigger than us, and we feel it all the way deep down in our spirit. And I think that's one way how Eleanor Rigby turned into a spiritual. You know, there's all of these just really sort of out of this world moments where we just lose ourselves completely. And it feels like there's, you know, a spirit in the room bigger than us. There's something there with us that's bigger than us. And I think that's how a lot of, you know, the character and that deep spiritual nature in our arrangement comes about.
That's so beautiful.
Anthony, about you asked about concerts.
Yeah.
We've been blessed to both do our own concerts and really collaborate with some awesome artists. Shouting out Ray Chu and his wife Vivian Chu, who literally probably at 3 a.m. in the morning, Vivian was perusing Instagram, and we had made our first little video of Isn't She Lovely, and it was sort of our first video that we posted, and just to kind of get it out there. And it wasn't, you know, this was before we really had locked down our sound and locked down the form of the, you know, the way we wanted to convey the piece. And she saw that in its raw form, in its raw state, and said, hey, we're doing a tribute to Stevie Wonder, a sing-along actually, because at this time Carnegie Hall had partnered with them as producers to really diversify the audience and the programming, which was so needed. And she brought us on for the ride. And honestly, Anthony and Ashleigh, anytime they've had the opportunity to program us, and I mean, like Bryant Park, like places that are outdoors that people are not used to hearing soulful music on stringed instruments. They have asked us to join them, and they have been wonderful mentors to us as well. Because I say mentors because after the Bryant Park show, and it's all the, thanks for being a part of this show. This is the Choose talking to us. He also went musical with it. Hey, when you hit that line on Aretha's piece, when we play You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. Hey, why don't you clip that note here? Why don't you do a little staccato here? It'll land much better. And we did, and we've been playing it that way since. I mean, so I say mentors because these are folks who are already established in the industry, who want to see us do well. We played in Vail, Colorado last summer, for a beautiful, beautiful wedding. How many feet were we up, y'all? 15, 16,000?
I don't know. I had a headache.
We were in heaven.
we were in heaven for a wedding. Bobby Massey, the Chicago Bear, married a wonderful, wonderful woman. And we know Andre Wells from the DC community. He's an event planner. And so he's been another person who's just said, you know what? This matches this aligns. Let me use the word alignment. This aligns with what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to showcase in terms of Black excellence. Let's bring the string queens on board. And then our producer, I mean, there's so many stories, y'all. Our producer and our sound engineer who helped us create the EP, his name is Chris Lewis, somebody that I knew from back at Howard, political science background, but phenomenal keyboard player and producer who didn't just push record when we went in the studio, right? You have lots of engineers who will just say, okay, I'll press record when you say go. No, he said, what about this chord? What about that? I think you should record that again.
Yeah.
So there's things like that.
Yeah. And I think what you're getting at, Kenny, too, is like, there's a village that surrounds us. Of people from every walk of life. I think of Kevin Merida at the Undefeated, who helped put together the Lift Every Voice and Sing reimagining piece that we did with Aloe Black. But prior to that, right, that didn't just come out of nowhere. He invited us to play at the office of the Undefeated for a Christmas party. And then we met at a DC Jazz Festival brunch, fundraising brunch, several weeks prior. And so we just have a village surrounding us that supports us, that motivates us, that encourages us, but most importantly, that connects us to other people, even outside of our industry, to bring what we do to audiences that might not necessarily be used to seeing us,
Definitely. I want to pop in and ask you a really quick question. Have you ever done any go-go music, or do you have any plans on doing go-go? I grew up partly in Arlington, Virginia, so yeah.
Love it.
Yes.
So you have an appreciation.
Don't mute.
I grew up with that.
Yes, don't mute DC.
Don't
right?
mute DC.
Yes.
Go-go. So one of the originals that is sort of in the works now definitely has a little bit of a go-go flair to it.
We have to do it though, right? Yeah, we have to do it.
Absolutely. But I think an inspiration behind that is when we were invited to perform on the Capital Jazz Cruise back in January. Thank God we got off that ship just in time before coronavirus hit, by the way. We were blessed to be in the presence of a wonderful go-go band titled Belladonna. And they're not just any go-go band, they're all females. They are all Black women. And so the energy, I was there studying them. We were all there just sort of studying them, right? The energy between them. Who takes the lead, right? Who's on the cowbell? Who's on the percussion? Who's on the keys? And how all of these parts come together and work. But most importantly, right now, no one's just sort of involved in the technique of their instrument when go-go, like when we think go-go, right? It's about moving and touching people and getting people to get up and dance and smile and be happy. And so as we're, working to put together these originals right now, we're taking all of those notes from the cruise, from seeing Belladonna, from listening to Chuck Brown and, just all of the wonderful DC go-go legends, and incorporating all of that inspiration into creating something new for our sound. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Love it.
And it's so fun. It's so fun. My daughter the other day was just in here with a pot and a spoon, and I was practicing something, and she was
so I have the cowbell.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
That's amazing. I'm wondering if you think with it obviously there's so much energy and so much camaraderie and friendship and trust that you have. in music and where you play, how you look, all of those things. Are there things that you're sort of grappling with now, or even have evolved into thinking about, well, actually, the time seems right to be able to arrange this piece, or given current situation, politics, uprest, etc., we really should add something else to our repertoire? Are you finding that you're sort of listening to what the needs may be, and that's also affecting your repertoire?
Absolutely. Sharp, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, one beautiful thing is that from the beginning, spirituals have always been in our repertoire.
Yes.
I mean, and there is, when getting ready for a show, like I said earlier, we think about, you know, who we're playing for. And I will say, like a Blues Alley,
Mm-hmm.
it was our album release. And in the rehearsal, there was just a movement that the three of us had. And it was like, yeah, Amazing Grace.
Yeah.
We just have to put Amazing Grace on the program. And I don't think I've actually ever heard that in Blues Alley, not that it's ever been done, but just saying, I haven't heard it. And in our programming, in what we do, first we pray before we get out there. And we've always just said, you know what, this needs a spiritual, or this needs what we're feeling to be in this program pre our experience right now and what we're going through. So to answer your question, that hasn't changed. We are definitely moving forward with more to say, more to do, more to create. We were actually talking about, you know what, our new songs, our originals, they don't need to be, you know, fast finger work and poppy anything. I mean, our mood right now is,
yes,
let's do this.
yes,
Let's show who we are. Let's make everyone aware of the situation. And I know you guys understand what I'm saying. And so the mood in composing right now is even more of a soulful, just heart tugging, nothing sad, but just really honest.
right,
And really in the moment.
right.
The pop and fast spiccato and all of that's always there. That will come. But the time we're in right now, it's just time to bear it all.
Yeah, yeah. And music is that space, right? To be able to emote and express ourselves. And then I think about the jazz in our repertoire. Jazz is like the first, it's American music, and it comes from Black people. And especially right now with everything that we're dealing with the police brutality and Ahmad and Brianna and Rayshard, and the list goes on and on and on. You know, just making sure that we highlight the contributions of African Americans in music in this country. You know, there would be no rock and roll had jazz not been done, you know, or gospel. You know, it all just comes from Black music, and just sort of bringing to the forefront, letting people know, hey, all of this music that we love to listen, like there are no lines. It's an evolutionary process. You know, it's not this division between this or that. It's all evolved from the beginnings of this country. And we're so blessed now, you know, to be able to still tell the stories of our ancestors, for our young people to know and learn the history, like you were saying, Anthony, of go-go, and to learn about Chuck Brown, and to learn about all of the great musicians who have, you know, put music out there in this world that everybody loves to listen to. And especially with young people right now, I think I was just reading an article in the New York Times this morning about children have been home for at least 4 or 5 months now, right? Academically, everybody will be fine, right? Teachers will continue to be teachers, students will continue to be students, but what's happening with their socio-emotional development right now, right? And music and the arts and dance. Like I said, my daughter just had a dance class this morning with one of my old Juilliard classmates, who happens to be a dancer of color. And she's teaching them about Alvin Ailey, and she's teaching them about Dance Theater of Harlem and global dance communities. And so just making sure that children have a safe space to express themselves and to really, you know, maybe pick up an instrument. It could be or turn something into an instrument, right? The pot with the spoon, you know, just being able to have a creative space to let out all of those emotions that we're all sort of I'm someone who holds everything inside. And so I know what that feels like. And I was the same way as a child. And I know what that feels like as a child. And so just giving them creative outlets to be able to express themselves so that when we all come out on the other side of this, we're in a better place mentally, we're in a better place emotionally, and hopefully we're all able to coexist a little bit better because we put all of those things out there in the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for being so honest and sharing this. And with that said, you're talking a lot about your family and your partners. You are educators, wives, family members, mothers, performers, creators, arrangers, composers.
Entrepreneurs.
And entrepreneurs.
Yes.
and pet owners. Thank you. And how do you balance between all of those roles, and how do these roles inform each other as you're developing, practicing, and leading your life right now?
Great question.
Yeah, I would not, and then there's like, so it's family, and then there's like offshoots of family, but I think the way that I play, the way that I teach, the type of friend that I am, all of those many hats that you said, when I was a school leader at one point, like all of those things, they come from the way that I was raised. They come from my family background. Like my father, I can remember many, many explicit lessons that were taught. Everybody deserves a second chance within reason. Everyone deserves a second chance. Your reputation is all you have. I remember the family motto.
I think we lost you, Kendall.
So Kendall is in the country, like in the backwoods of like Louisiana right now. And so her internet, she's with her family, she's home with her family,
okay.
But her internet comes in and out. So
we got the essence of roots and family influences everything. That's sort of the anchor. If she comes back, she can certainly elaborate. But Dawn, Elise, anything that you want to share on that kind of question?
Definitely balance. It is a lot. I'm not going to even lie. It is a lot to balance, a lot to do. I'm exhausted at the end of every day. My daughter is in California, so she's old enough and living on her own. So it's a different scenario for me than for Dawn. The worry doesn't stop though, and the guiding doesn't stop. And I'm newly married, and so that's a change. Thank you. It's going to be a year next week. But just even in that, like my time was all my time. And do whatever the heck I want, right? But then you have this other person and you, that's right. So let me turn off my phone. Let me disconnect and be with you. So actually really my husband is a musician as well. And so his understanding is great. But of course, in that understanding, I have to understand. So there's this huge compromise as well. Like, your bandmates are wonderful. Now, where's my time? You know?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
And then in teaching, we have time for rehearsals, but we also have time for our kids. And I love what Dawn said earlier about putting what we do into our kids. Like being a string queen or being an educator, those two lines always intersect, which is what I love. And so the balance there is actually a little easier. Although there are days where, hi, principal, so there's a performance and it's during a class and so I need to sub. And so that balance, what I can say is our bosses understand exactly what we're doing and understand exactly where we're going and where we want to go. So we have that understanding. Now we're not taking advantage of anything or anyone, but again, it's a balance of taking this gig, maybe not this one because now, and also I must say, our children mean the world to us. Like missing their class is huge for us. It's not hooking work at all. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this lesson I have ready for them and they're on this track and I want to keep them going. So even taking a performance during work time is a challenge for us because we actually want to be at work and see our kids go to the next level. Right. So again, it's a balancing act and really knowing that the ones who love you and whom you love, they always come first. They just always come first. And then after that, we fit everything else in. Yeah. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Dawn.
No, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. And it's also, like you said earlier, Elise, we have to be very organized, right? There's definitely a system of like routines that we go through. Usually we try to stick as much as we can to a schedule, which can get interesting sometimes depending on people's, personal lives. And I must say, one of the most beautiful parts of being a string queen is we take each other's personal lives into account before we make any professional decisions. And I think that's something that's really helped sustain us for the past couple of years. We know if someone has a really busy week teaching, we'll dance around with our rehearsal schedule a little bit. Or there have been many times where I'm like, hey guys, I thought I could rehearse. I just lost my, daycare pickup or my school pickup for Briley. I have to go and pick her up. And then I'll pick her up and bring her to rehearsal. And Kendall and Elise are always so gracious with keeping her entertained and giving her things to do during rehearsal. And as a mother, it's beautiful to watch because she's being immersed. My child is being immersed in all of this music. She's seeing the process. And most importantly, and I hate to say this, but sometimes the images of Black women that we see on TV are not always as favorable as we would like. And so just as a Black mother, I love when my daughter is in the presence of the string queens because she sees us communicating with one another effectively, right? Like, and we're not out here twerk, all the, like, we're not doing that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a really unfortunate reality. And I'll be like, one of my guilty pleasures is like loving hip hop, but I can't watch it with my kid around because every time I turn it on, someone's half naked or someone's cursing somebody out or, something to that effect. And so I love, the system that we all have. We are a family, right? Like outside of our immediate families, we're also a family and we do what we need to do to make things work. And like Elise is saying, when you throw a husband into the mix of everything, I've been married now for almost 10 years, our husbands need attention too. Our husbands are just as important, if not more important, than the music. And so just finding ways to stay as organized as we can, to allocate as much time as we can to the people and the things that we love most in life. And it's helped us really establish like a system of priorities. And like Elise is saying, not everything is as important at the same time. Right. And so we have to really establish, well, what's most important right now? What are the top 3 things that need to get done? And if it's something that can be, placed strategically down the line, then it doesn't have to happen right now. And that makes room for something else that's just as important in the time. So yeah, being organized really helps us out. Being understanding, being empathetic, being compassionate. We know if someone didn't eat lunch that day because they had a really busy day, but I had an hour off, well, let me go pick you up some lunch and bring you some food to eat, right? None of this can work if you're not fueling the body, if you're not being healthy, if you're not getting enough rest, right? If you're not doing all of those self-care routines. Kendall is really wonderful, and maybe she can talk about this with self-care and making sure she, reminds us every day, oh, there she goes. But just make sure you're taking care of yourself. Get to the gym, go for that run, eat that apple instead of that French fry, because all of these things, what you put in is what you get out. Right. And so we understand that, and we understand that we do lead very, very busy lives. There are people who need us, and there are people who depend on us. And so if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not able to take care of anyone else or present the music that we do,
Thank you so much for saying that and for emphasizing that. So often people forget self-care, and it just needs to be preached as often and as loud as possible. So thank you so much.
On self-care, when Dawn got ready to get she gives the best presents. One of the things she put in my Christmas present, was it Christmas or birthday? I think it was Christmas, was like a guided meditation kit, and incense, and there are many things, right? A new pair of strings, right? A gift certificate to go get a bow re-haired, all these things. But that also showed me where she prioritized self-care in the breadth of her life, and it was inspirational. I don't think I ever told you that, Dawn.
Thank you, Kendall. And thank you for showing up at my doorstep on Mother's Day and showing up on Elise's doorstep on Mother's Day with a bouquet of flowers, a card. She's standing at her car with her mask on.
Yes.
She had just gotten over being ill herself, but the thoughtfulness of, you know, I understand that Dawn and Elise are mothers, and today is Mother's Day. And I'm just going to pop up, had no idea. We text and call each other all day. All night.
All day long.
But there was no warning. It was a knock at the door, and I'm like in my bathrobe, and I open the door, and there's this beautiful bouquet of flowers, and Kendall standing at her car in her mask, and I think I just like boohoo cried.
I cried
behind
too.
the mask.
It was beautiful.
Yeah,
these are the best mothers I know, Ashleigh and Anthony. These are, you know, it's not my time yet, but I'm very confident that when it is my time, I have two big sisters, right? And that's in the music too, but it's in the family aspect too. There's so many things that they don't know. I'm taking mental notes and sometimes real notes on how to really do this thing and do it well. And they're so vulnerable and transparent with not just what it is today and how people view us and see us today. They will go into the archives of, yeah, I remember when this time happened. You know, if I ask them for advice or something like that. I mean, the sisterhood and the family thing, we cannot overstate it enough. And Elise is absolutely right. We've been in lots of other groups, lots of other ensembles, lots of other, I've been in an all women, and it hasn't, there's nothing like the String Queen.
Yeah, well said.
That's amazing and so obvious from this conversation that there is a real sisterhood and friendship with the work that you do. How can people follow along in this sisterhood and this friendship? How can they stay connected, like, tweet, share, buy your latest album, check out that latest music video, follow along with dreams yet to be realized? How can people learn more about the Queens?
Somebody take it.
Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So we're all over social media, Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is at The String Queens. And, you know, we like to tell people to please include the article, the part, which seems like, of course, but it's at The String Queens. We also have a website, www.thestringqueens.com. And then we would love for everybody watching and listening to take a listen to our EP that we released around Thanksgiving last year, 2019. And that can be found on all digital outlets, iTunes, Google Play. We have a Pandora now. We have a Pandora station now. What am I missing, ladies?
You always hit it, girl.
That's yeah, you did.
You always get it. I just let you do it.
Yeah. And also, right, like we're a trio, we're the String Queens, but like you were saying, Ash, this is a sisterhood, right? And like every woman of color, every Black woman, every person, right, who is a part of this movement that's sort of taking place right now, we're all in this family together. And so we always welcome inquiries, especially from young people. If you have a question, a practice question, you know, something related to a piece you might want to play, but you're not so sure about, or we've received inquiries of people who haven't played for 30 years and they've come to a String Queens concert and they're like, you know what? I want to pick up my violin again, or I want to pick up my cello again, right? So we welcome people to join this family, to join this sisterhood, to join everything that we do, because it's not just about us, right? It's all of these things and people working together that creates this magic that happens when the String Queens take the stage, or when we listen to a piece of music from another artist. You know, this is a family, it's a community, and if you're about love, if you're about peace, if you're about positivity and optimism and hope and inspiration, come on into the family.
Beautiful. That is such a beautiful place, Dawn, to be able to end this conversation with that kind of invitation to join this family, which is so well grounded in so much history, so much love, first of all. Thank you, Dawn, Elise, and Kendall, Anthony, obviously from the Netherlands. Thank you for joining in this conversation. And thanks to everyone for listening, and definitely staying in touch with all the amazingness that you have been and will continue to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, guys. Thank you so much.